Tonight, we delve into the recent First Ministers meeting, exploring the balance between national unity and regional interests. And then we'll discuss the complexities of enforcing wildfire evacuations amid rising tensions.
And the latest and greatest on that thrilling Stanley Cup Final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. Four floors up from Gary as usual. From Montreal, I'm Eddie Tekalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Let's get started.
This has been the best meeting we've had in 10 years. Simple. Best meeting I've had in 7 years. And there was no expectations that the Prime Minister was going to come out and say, you get that project, you get that project. It was a great discussion. Now, we were all talking. Now it's time to put it into action. All of us are responsible. But I thought it was an incredible meeting. Great communication, great collaboration, and we all walked out of that room united. And that's the most important thing.
We discussed a wide range of potential nation-building projects, including, and this is far from exhaustive, the Western and Arctic Corridor, which, amongst other things, connects energy, critical minerals, and trade infrastructure, the Eastern Energy Partnership, critical minerals pathways, which include a range of critical mineral projects that premiers can speak to, the next stage of nuclear, from uranium to SMRs to large-scale nuclear, and a series of infrastructure investments for export diversification from ports to rails to last-mile roads. All First Ministers agreed that Indigenous partnerships and equity will be central to success. And upcoming federal legislation will mandate both meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples, both during the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and developing the conditions for each project. The goal here is to get projects built faster so we can create more high-paying careers and greater prosperity for all Canadians.
We have an incredible group of premiers. We are united. We're going to move this country forward, the likes of which this country's never seen before. And how we're going to do this is making sure that we don't have federal duplication. As the Prime Minister said, let's get it done quick, fast, immediate, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's not forget that President Trump has declared an economic war on every single business, every single person in this country. And we need to do everything we can to fight against him. Again, what the Prime Minister said, and I agree, an illegal trade war. And I think the President's going to have a rude awakening. We're going to unleash our strengths, and that's be it mining, the pipelines across the country, infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, and specifically the road to the Ring of Fire.
We're willing to work with the federal government on addressing some of the issues that are going to stand in the way of creating the environment for private investment. It doesn't help you to build a pipeline to the West Coast if there's a tanker ban. It becomes difficult to expand your natural gas market if you've got net zero power regs that are requiring it to be phased out by 2035. And you can't expand production if you have an emissions cap. So those are future conversations to be had about how we create that environment. But I think what I heard was that the Prime Minister wants to work on a dual track to be able to find some compromises on all of those, and I'm encouraged by that.
So quickly tarnished by BC Premier David Eby the day after, who said he doesn't support lifting the ban on oil tankers off his province's northern coast, nor would he back a new pipeline through the northern part of the province. Now, he was speaking from Japan, where he is on a 10-day trade mission, He was represented at the First Minister's meeting by Deputy Premier Nikki Sharma. So there we have it. Unity one day, and then a tinge of maybe not, a little bit of water thrown on the parade there, Eddie. What do you think?
Well, I mean, first of all, just the entire exercise of the Prime Minister Premier meeting of the provinces and the territories, you know, just the language and just the body posturing, and in most part, the enthusiasm expressed by everyone in attendance was, I tell you, quite honestly, for me, was very uplifting, you know, considering the difficult times we've been living in lately, and post-election. And, you know, this is Prime Minister Carney's first major exercise above and beyond opening up Parliament, having the King open the throne, going through his first sessions in Parliament. I mean, he did a bang-up job in terms of rallying the troops. And you know what? Although, you know, you're looking at Premier Smith, who's been pretty much cautiously optimistic in her language and what she's been saying prior to this. What she said is extremely positive. I'd say. I mean, there's nothing written in stone or anything like that, but she seems to be pretty optimistic with what's been going on. You have Premier Ford. I mean, talk about being upbeat. I mean, he's as conservative as they come, but talk about being upbeat and really doing what needs to be done above and beyond provincial requirements to get it done for Canada. And he was very, very clear on that. You know, you don't have although unfortunately we don't have the clip from Quebec, but even in French, as Legault was speaking, I mean, he was very clear that, you know, this is a Quebec and a Canada thing and a Canada-Quebec thing. And you know what, Gary, at the end of the day, you can't be batting 1,000 all the time. Okay, so you know what, David Eby, I think he was basically, I don't think he said hell no, don't bother me anymore. I think what he's done is he's left the door open for more discussion and dialogue, because look, his position in British Columbia is extremely important because that's the gateway to the Pacific in terms of getting oil and gas exports out there. And you know what? British Columbia is as pristine as you can possibly get in terms of an environment in the country, or let alone in most parts of the world. So I think he has to be protective of it. His constituents are very protective of nature there, and you just can't ignore it. But I don't think it's a hell no, leave me alone. Hell no, let's have some more discussion about this. And look, Premier Smith is absolutely right. We can't sell any oil out west, out over the Pacific Rim to our Asian partners if you can't get the tankers in and out of British Columbia that's going to transport the Alberta crude. So there's a lot of work to be done. You know what? Call it 12 out of 13. Let's call it 12 and a half out of 13 premiers are on board with this. And the other half is they have to continue working with David Eby. And I know the other premiers and leaders have their own concerns in their back pockets, which will eventually come out. But you know what? All in all, it was very, very encouraging to see, Gary. I've never seen that type of cooperation post-meeting in more than a decade, beyond that. So it was really great to see.
We do have an audience question for this segment. Do you believe the First Minister's united front will lead to tangible progress, or are underlying regional tensions too significant to overcome? I don't think they're too significant to overcome. When we heard, you know, I mean, one of the major stumbling blocks or perceived stumbling blocks has been Premier Danielle Smith. And she came out of that meeting very, very low key, and very encouraged by what she heard and the discussion that took place behind closed doors. And for them to come out like that from a meeting, you don't usually see it that often. There's always some kind of issue that spills over into the open, and usually right at the meeting or the official communique at the end of the meeting kind of thing. it was when you watch that entire news conference on Monday following the meeting, it was there was a whole different tone. You could feel it, you could see it in the room. And with Prime Minister Carney and his direct business-like approach, which is really, from a political standpoint, what we really need in this country is a more business-like approach to all of the politics at all levels, from municipal right on through. But there certainly was a different sense. Now, we're going to touch upon this too briefly, because this is something that's, it broke after we started putting the show together, and that's the 50% tariff now on Canadian steel and aluminum, and the fact that Prime Minister Carney was very, very careful in how he worded his responses to that whole situation. And he said, we're working to arrive at an agreement, and we'll see how it goes in the next couple of days. And then we'll have a look at what sort of retaliation we will take if nothing comes out of this agreement. Today, in particular, it became very well known that both Carney and the U.S. president have been talking directly over the last few days and working on some kind of a new trade agreement, which, as a former international trade minister in the, I believe it was Trudeau government very early on, said today that when you have two leaders talking on a regular basis back and forth, that means a lot of the background work and the T's have been crossed and I's dotted on both sides, and it's strong enough that they're bringing it together to those two to finalize it and then come out with the announcement. Now, you have, as somebody said, well, you have two businessmen negotiating this deal, and I think it was a former NDP MP who was on Power Play tonight, and he said, well, we have one successful business person on the Canadian side. On the other side, the guy who went bankrupt 7 times.
At least he's honest.
Well, exactly. That's just it, exactly. So I don't know. Like, there's Tony Clement, who was a minister in the Harper government, brought up a point today too, and he said, we're not getting any information because they're saying they're not going to negotiate this deal in the media, in public. I get that. There's going to be give and take. But as he said, our sovereignty is at stake here as well, because we both know that the Oval Office, even during the first term that he was in the Oval Office, the U.S. president was pushing on things like our supply management programs, which is a real sore spot here in Quebec. If anything is, if those programs are touched in any way. And they were saved through the negotiations of the revised free trade deal with the U.S. and Mexico. But who knows what's going on now, and who knows what else as far as are we going to be perhaps forced to commit to buying some kind of U.S. military equipment as well. All sorts of things are coming into play. And yes, we deserve answers on that. And I think Canadians deserve some kind of input on it before it is signed, sealed, and delivered, because we already gone down this road once with this guy.
Right.
And it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. His signature and his word mean nothing. So why are we so quick to jump in when a number of other nations are just kind of holding back and waiting to see where some of the court action goes against some of these tariffs and the appeals of those court decisions. And as I say, they're holding back to a certain degree and not rushing in to make any kind of an announcement or sign any kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I think I know where the Prime Minister is coming from. He wants to get his agenda rolling, and this part of it is a real pothole in that road to get the agenda rolling, or at least what he sees as his agenda. But I think that we have to tread very, very, very carefully as to what we end up giving away or agreeing to massage and open a door, because once you do with this guy, we've got 3 years and 7 months, 3 years and almost 6 months left where he can wreak havoc, because he'll just ignore the terms of the deal, the same as he's ignoring the Constitution and laws of the United States.
Exactly.
So how do you trust him?
Well, it's almost to a point where you kind of say, do you fight fire with fire? And we kind of agree with the United States that we're going to be doing A, B, and C, and then back out of it because we don't feel like it. I mean, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I know that's not the Canadian way. Okay, so what I'm hoping is happening is, Carney is having that discussion with the American government. I think first and foremost, one of the killer tariffs that we're experiencing in Canada, the biggest of the tariffs is, of course, steel and aluminum. It's the backbone of our Rust Belt in Ontario, if you want to call it, then aluminum in Quebec, right? So, if he's looking to get some sort of concessions or some kind of agreement struck, and I don't like using the word deal because that's a Trump thing, some sort of an agreement whereby we can move forward for at least the next year, and we'll see how that goes moving forward. That's one way of approaching it. But foremost, in parallel, and I would be surprised if this was not discussed with the premiers during the last meeting with Prime Minister Carney, is in parallel, you find alternate solutions to doing business with the United States of America. So you pursue both. Number one, get that huge monkey off our back, which is those 50% tariffs. Get some concessions to that from the United States. Get a timeline on that in terms of when the next time is that we're going to be having discussions on the rest of the tariffs, and in parallel, strike deals with Asia and strike deals with Europe or any other country that wants to do fair, honest business with our country. And you're absolutely right, Gary. This is all about our sovereignty, our identity as a country, and our strength as a country. And I think it could clearly be demonstrated through our smart economics, where so far, so good. We haven't actually seen any writing on the wall yet, but I think the way they're progressing quickly but cautiously and very tactically, if you want to say, I think is a good thing for the way things are progressing so far. And as soon as he can get this deal made for steel and aluminum, you move on to the next thing. Because look, in our back pocket, Gary, we have hydro. The United States is overwhelmingly dependent on our hydro, especially in the northeastern part of the United States. That's a back pocket trump card. And, Mr. Trump likes to talk about having cards in your pocket, right? That is a big card in our pocket. And you know what? I'm sure Mr. Ford is chomping at the bit and turning the switch off if they really piss him off. He's being very, very clear with Prime Minister Carney that we want to be able to levy aggressive sanctions against the United States as well. And I think the Canadian Labour Congress was also very adamant about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and be very aggressive with it. So, you know what? Stay tuned, Gary. I think it's going to turn out good, where we'll be able to pacify the American government at least get a semi-deal going while we aggressively pursue alternative business partners. And you know what? You mentioned military. Man, you and I have been talking about the F-35s and the Saab Gripen like there's no tomorrow. You know what? I really hope that Prime Minister Carney does not use that as a bargaining chip. I think you and I both agree we're on the hook for 16 F-35s. You know what? We'll take them and we'll sell them to somebody else. Go with something that works for us and where we don't have a dependency on the American military. So you know what? The United States has, I think Premier Ford is right. United States, watch, listen. There is more to come from your neighbors up north, and it's not going to be pretty. And I think we're at a point where we just can't be pretty with this anymore. So,
No.
Here for our guys.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you said about the way that Ontario Premier Doug Ford framed that comment. We are at war, and we didn't ask for it. It was thrusted upon us, so the gloves are off. And as the saying goes, elbows up. And Ford today was chomping at the bit. He wanted something thrown back across the 49th parallel to say, yeah, no, this is not right, and this is you're going to feel it as much as we are. Boom. But the Prime Minister is still, he has his game plan, I guess, and hopefully it's going to work out for him.
And he's holding his cards close to his chest too.
Yeah, very much so. So hopefully, he's on the right track. But again, I just keep coming back to the fact you cannot trust the man who is occupying the U.S. presidency at the moment. You just can't trust him. His word and his, as I say, signature mean absolutely nothing. Now, coming back to Monday's meeting and the premiers, there were a few more agreements or memorandums of agreement signed between some of the provinces, again, working on alleviating those interprovincial trade barriers. So there has been more happening in the last 3 months in that area than what we have witnessed in the last 10 years.
Easy.
Yeah. So that's, to me, is a significant point of progress, and we just have to keep it going. And of course, the federal government, the Prime Minister has said he is moving to ensure that all federal interprovincial regulations are removed by Canada Day, which is not that far away now. So he has to roll that through Parliament. So I sense there is a much more cooperative spirit among the premiers and the federal government than what we have witnessed even before the Trudeau years, where for the last decade it was not very good at all.
I think you have to go back to the Harper era.
I was about to say, even going back to the Harper years, there was a lot of tension and a lot of pushback and pushing around, if you will, between the premiers and the federal government at that point. So this is a whole new era that we have witnessed just with this one meeting. And again, the meeting was held in Saskatchewan, and that's the first time that I think they've hosted First Minister's meeting. Mm-hmm. So he's getting out, he's showing the West that they're a part of the country and an important part of the country, and he's getting out around in that respect. He's trying to send messages in different ways here, and there's one message that you and I watched a clip that I'm going to play in a few minutes. Was it yesterday? And we talked about it as to, was he sending a message across the floor and across the country? and we'll pick up on that after we play that clip. But I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing and seeing, and the way that the Alberta Premier, Premier Smith, worded her response to that question, and that she's encouraged by what she sees so far. That's a huge step forward from what we were hearing just even like 2 months ago.
Big step, absolutely big step. And again, I'm not going to take anything away from Premier Legault in Quebec as well. You know, as a distinct culture, even he. I mean, we said this before. How pissed off do you have to make a Quebecer for them to start waving Canadian flags? And you know what, Gary? Honestly, I don't think it's stopped. I think the flags are still being waved here, and Premier Legault, Mr. Legault, was very articulate in terms of this is a Quebec Canada thing. We're in this together, and it was so nice to hear him say that. You don't hear that very often from the leaders of Quebec, but you know what? Good on him for actually being on board with this whole thing. So you know what? Let's say 12 and a half out of 13 ministers, the 12 and a half, the half being our BC premier. I think that's a pretty good batting average, if you ask me.
Oh, no question. And you're right. Premier Legault has, I won't say softened. He is open now to talking about a pipeline, not necessarily an oil pipeline that would go and bring the Western crude through to the largest refinery in Canada, in New Brunswick, but he is open to at least like a natural gas pipeline that would end, I believe it's in the Sept-Îles area, and where they would load ships and send it on its way to Europe. And that's Europe is a huge market right now for natural gas. And of course, they have the natural gas facility in St. John as well, where they've been bringing natural gas in for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now, and shipping it out through. A lot of that's gone right through to the Northeast U.S. They also can offload oil if the need be there, although there's a huge tanker area that takes the largest tankers in the world for the refinery. But that's all oil coming from offshore, primarily Saudi Arabia. And we all know where that money's going.
Yeah.
And it could be staying here in Canada. So, you know, and the LNG facility can be very quickly, I think, converted to shipping out as well. So, and it's owned now by Irving Oil sold its interest. So Repsol, Spanish-based energy company, owns it lock, stock, and barrel now. It's been that way for a few years. So, you know, and so they have to be looking at this and thinking, you know, there's some real opportunities for us because, you know, they're in Spain and they're throughout Europe. That's their basic, you know, that's their home base, really. So they have to be looking at these kinds of things too. So there's all sorts of very positives that are there in front of us. And if, you know, it's going to take some time to even get some of this construction underway and get things completed. But man, oh man, we are on the cusp of things. And, you know, the Prime Minister's talking about one approval at the federal level going through and no longer than 2 years. Well, you heard Premier Ford in one clip talking about the Ring of Fire. And that's an area in northwestern Ontario. They were talking about, and it's resource rich. And I believe a lot of it's on First Nations land as well. But they've been talking about developing that. They were talking about that 27 years ago when I was living in Kelowna. And nothing never, or I'm not Kelowna, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started going to northwestern Ontario to work at visit with our stations up there. Ring of Fire, but nothing really ever took hold because, you know, some mining permits and other permits could take up to 15 years, 10 years, 15 years, and some people have walked away after 20 years throwing their hands up. So we have to really open up, be aware of environmental concerns and everything, but we have to start things rolling because we are so resource rich. I'm convinced that we could be in the top 3 power broker countries in the world.
And I think rather quickly.
Yeah,
we
we
put
just
our
need
mind
to get
to it.
things going.
Well, you know what? All premiers and the Prime Minister, we spoke about Mr. Legault, he clearly sees the gravity of the situation as it is today, how it's unfolding in front of us every 24 hours. And we have to be prepared to plan ahead, not just by 24 hours, but long term. And every premier, led by the Prime Minister of Canada, sees the gravity of the situation in terms of what that administration in the United States is doing to the global economy. So, you know what? The ball is rolling very quickly. I think it's going to continue rolling very quickly. Everybody across the country understands what the gravity of the situation is, from our leaders to our key businessmen, the leaders of our businesses and the CEOs of companies in Canada understand what the gravity of this is and are definitely bestowing their support to the leadership of our country and our provinces. So you know what? Let's just hope that the ball continues rolling and we continue not to take the foot off the gas pedal and understand how serious the situation is. There's no time for second guessing or fooling around here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before moving on, I just wanted to bring everyone up to date on the Prime Minister and the Liberals emerged from a potential non-confidence motion last night as the Commons was set to vote on the throne speech. Now, the NDP were out of the gate early saying that they would vote against it. The speech failed to meet the party's expectations for Canadians. The threat fizzled when the call for the vote came. No one requested a recorded vote. So under the House rules, that is taken as the motion to accept the throne speech was deemed approved.
Yeah.
Parliamentary rules, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
quiet meant acceptance, I guess, right?
Right. They dodged a bullet on that one. So that's the throne speech out of the way. Now, Carney is also sticking to his commitment of a fall budget, and during Tuesday's question period, stood his ground. And he stood his ground after Monday night. The Conservatives were successful in getting a motion passed in the House of Commons, calling for the Liberal government to table a budget right away. Anyhow, the next day, Tuesday, in question period, things started to roll along, and actually, I have to say, it was somewhat entertaining, and we'll talk about it after. Let's just watch it first.
Canadians deserve real fiscal management, not excuses or fact-free talking points. And here's some of the facts. Liberal consultant spending is expected to rise 35% to $26 billion, breaking their promise to cut down on consultants. Fact. Wow. Liberals promised $20 billion in elbows up U.S. tariffs, but later dropped them with no regard to affected Canadian workers or fiscal impacts. Fact. The majority of this chamber voted last night for a spring budget. Fact. On what date would the Liberals face the facts and table a budget for their $500 billion in new spending?
Mr. Speaker, the First Minister's agreed on a plan to build this great country. Stand up to Donald Trump. Fact. Mr. Speaker, the Government of Canada is imposing tariffs that cause maximum impact on the United States, minimum impact on Canada. Fact. On over $60 billion of U.S. exports to Canada. Fact. Raised over $1.7 billion already. Fact, fact, fact.
Mr. Speaker, I realize he's new here, but all those things would be in a budget if he'd table one. Mr. Speaker, this year alone, this government government is going to spend a staggering $26 billion on high-priced, liberal-friendly consultants, an eye-watering $1,400 for every Canadian family. They'll present no budget, no departmental plans, and zero transparency. They won't even stand in this House and tell Canadians what the deficit will be this year. Will the Liberals come clean? Table the spring budget as this House has demanded.
I will speak softly. Unlike the member opposite, I know the difference between a main estimate and a budget. Here, here. And unlike the members opposite, we know how to grow this economy without spending money. And that's why we're proposing. That's why we're proposing a bill to build one Canadian economy out of 13. And all the provinces and Quebec agree. Here, here.
And there
I
was
love
the
it.
line.
I loved it.
Oh, you don't feel that animosity, that real sort of almost feeling of hate, and anger. You don't see that. I mean, Carney, I was kind of chuckling and smiling a couple of times when he was making his response. And both sides of the House were laughing. So,
Yeah.
but they were discussing things that are serious, and Carney was standing his ground as far as why he doesn't, or why he's not tabling the budget now. He's going to wait until the fall. But and the one thing that we were talking about just before teeing that up was he sending a message to Quebec with that last line: the provinces and Quebec are on board.
Right.
Instead of just saying the provinces, or
Yeah. Well, it's a dual message, To me, it's basically a dual message, Gary. I mean, he recognized Quebec on the floor. Okay, during the debate, he recognized Quebec as, for the lack of a better word, special. Okay, we are a unique culture here. There's no question about it. Multi-international culture here, on top of being Quebecois and French. He recognized that. He basically said the rest of Canada and Quebec. That's a recognition that Quebec is somewhat different from the rest of Canada. Like all provinces have their differences. And then by the same token, he's also, in a weird way, in a very unique way, almost claiming victory, if I can say that, where Quebec is also on board with this Canada First program. So subtly, with one statement, he sent two clear, subtle messages that Quebec is part of Canada. We need Quebec. We're including Quebec, and we're also recognizing you as a unique society. Wow. I don't think that's a speechwriter thing. I think this just came right from brain to mouth because of the fact he's being questioned right on the floor. Right, so he had to respond, and respond eloquently. He did, Gary. I don't think you can disagree with that. Do you see any other messages in there I didn't pick out?
No, I think you're bang on, and clearly he is reaching out to Quebec, and sometimes it kind of gives me a bit of a pain when I hear the Quebec nation.
Yeah.
And I get it to a degree.
Nobody said that.
but we're in this together.
Yes.
And the more we realize that, especially from a Quebec perspective, and on the other, on either side of Quebec, the rest of the country on either side of Quebec, that we're all in it together. We're Canadians first, and then Quebecers or Maritimers or prairie people second.
Right.
That's what we need to do to bring the country together, even more so. But if nothing else, one of the greatest gifts coming out of the U.S. election was the way that the current president jumped in with both feet. And man, I don't think he realized he was going to stir up the hornet's nest that he did. In what he did, in launching at us and hammering away at the whole thing about becoming the 51st state and everything. Like, man, oh man. In some respects, to the current occupant of the Oval Office, thank you for that. Because you did more to bring this country together than what we've been able to do with all kinds of cultural events and everything else over the years. You did it. Yeah. So, anyway, but I thought that was certainly Carney for a new politician, top, into the top office. The last couple of times I've watched Question Period, he's handling himself well, and that was just classic. And
yes, it was.
Today, when I was putting things together for the show, I was sitting here watching that and chuckling again. I laughed. Every time I've played it, I've laughed, just chuckled, because just the way he handled it. And the little smile he got on his face at one point, and then he starts fat, I just call me strange, but I just found it quite entertaining, actually.
Well, you know what?
With some substance to it.
Well, there's a few words I think both you and I can share. Entertaining for sure. I got a sense of strength coming out of him because he was able to very clearly pick on the question, take the question, assimilate it, and come up with a response that's, I'm sure, going to be played on newsreels for quite some time. But it was a very, very informative response. And I just want to key in on something you said right at the beginning before we started this particular segment, where we just did not see the animosity in the House of Commons that you and I have been witnessing for the last 8 years, I'd say. There was no viciousness. This was very similar to two hockey players and two opposing teams punching each other in the face and then shaking hands and hugging each other after it was over. It was very civil, poignant, solid questions placed by the opposition. Very well spoken questions by the opposition, which, by the way, does not have their incumbent leader in place there. So that might have a lot to do with the fact that, there's I think you mentioned I didn't realize it yesterday until you mentioned it. We don't have Trudeau there. We don't have Poilievre there. And we don't have Singh there. So we have a bunch of experienced, hardened politicians doing what they're supposed to be doing, is debating properly with respect during question periods in the House of Commons, the way it should be done and the way it's always been done, except for the last 10 years. It just became a big crap show. And I felt proud to be a Canadian watching that. I really, really felt proud, both with the way the opposition handled himself and, by the way, Prime Minister Carney handled himself. Right.
Now, just before we move on, a couple of comments. Elizabeth commented earlier. Let's just bring those up. Oh, and I'll get that out of the way. Just one second. There we go. Okay, so.
What did you say?
I'm so excited. Bet on the Oilers winning. Yeah, I made $45.
Way to go.
And when you were referring to, I don't know.
Yeah, I said Mr. Trump. It's not often I say that. By no means at all, Elizabeth. I didn't mean it out of respect. It just came out. I'm sorry.
Okay. So up next, balancing public safety and personal autonomy. First, though, a brief word about a Montreal-based company. Web Hosting Canada, or WHC, a Canadian solution for all of your web-based data needs, including web hosting and domain offerings. With WHC, your data is hosted on servers here in Canada under Canadian privacy laws. And if you want to check them out, there's an affiliate link in the description below so you can see all that WHC offers. And thanks for supporting Canadian business And I will say that I have had my business with them for 4 years now, and great service overall, and no issues to speak of. So they're handling domain and the email that I have set up. So anyhow, check them out. The affiliate link is in the description below. All right. So let's move along because, geez, time is moving along, Eddie. Wow.
Yeah, it is. I told you.
Yeah, you did. You warned me. So the wildfire season is off to a devastating start with fires burning from northern Ontario to British Columbia. Manitoba and Saskatchewan have been particularly hard hit, with thousands forced to flee from the advancing wall of flames. Now, not everyone is heeding the call to evacuate, though. A northern Manitoba First Nations community saw a number of residents refusing to evacuate, some of them with young children. Now, it's a growing problem, whether it's wildfires or flooding or other natural disasters. More people are refusing to leave, even though a state of emergency has been declared, and really they could be forcibly removed and potentially arrested and or fined. Some believe they can best protect their properties. Others feel it's a violation of their rights. Really? Well, let's just have a look at a couple of facts here. Why people apparently are refusing to heed evacuation orders more and more. Number one, a distrust in government. They feel that government officials are blowing the risk out of proportion, or that they have some kind of an agenda behind the whole idea of getting people to move out, if you can believe that. So, also, we have protecting property or animals. Well, many residents refuse to leave animals behind. I get that. Farmers or rural residents often want to stay to protect livestock or equipment. Fear of looting is also a powerful motivator for people to stay behind. Now, in Fort McMurray back in 2016, some residents returned after evacuation to guard homes from looters, just that very reason. Mm-hmm. Number three, here's one. Personal experience and risk perception. Misinformation online. Some are persuaded by conspiracy theories or incorrect information online, and emergency warnings are often downplayed or contradicted in online echo chambers. That's a huge thing to be dealing with if you're in the position of an emergency management official. We also have personal identity and independence. Especially in rural areas, there's a strong sense of self-reliance and personal responsibility, and being told what to do, particularly by outsiders, triggers resistance. Mm-hmm. I find that hard to believe. So, what some of the experts are recommending is better communication and engagement ahead of crisis. Right. We can get into that one in a few minutes. Clear, trustworthy spokespeople who can deliver messages without political overtones. Yeah, just talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Support for evacuating pets and vulnerable individuals, which reduces resistance. And that is something that it's not taken lightly, but there are times when it does seem to be overshadowed by just sheer numbers that they're dealing with. So I can understand it to a degree, Eddie, but man, oh man, here's the other thing. If you stay behind, in the case of a wildfire, and there's one as I said, in Manitoba First Nations community, and they had earlier this week 2 out-of-control wildfires bearing down on their community. And those fires start feeding themselves. They create their own internal firestorms with their own winds and everything. And all of a sudden you see them just flying across treetops. And there's very little time to get out. Even professional firefighters dealing with those situations, they have to move quickly, and they have to make a decision very quickly as to, is it safe to stay? No, it's not. We've got to get out now.
Right.
So people sometimes don't realize, and yeah, you know, well, it wasn't as bad as what they said it was going to be, and how often has that happened with weather forecasts? But what you're doing is, not only are you putting your own life at risk and the lives of others, such as your family around you, at risk, but you're also putting the lives of first responders at risk if all of a sudden you pick up the phone, or you've got your cell phone or some kind of radio communication, and you put the call out, "We need help now." Those guys, gals go rushing in, putting their own lives in danger, in extreme danger in some of these wildfire situations and even flooding situations, to pull you out after you refuse to go. Now, I just have a problem with that. I don't know.
I do as well.
And frankly, to me, if you refuse to go, I'm sorry, you've made your choice. You're going to have to live or die by the sword. It's as simple as that. Like, I know it sounds cold and cruel, but when you think about what has happened in the past and how quickly that a firefighter's family could lose their loved one trying to rescue some bozo who decided, oh, I can stick this one out. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is when a state of emergency is declared, whether it's municipal, and in particular here provincial and or national, there is legislation behind that. And you know, it allows authorities to direct the evacuation of people and animals. Non-compliance in Alberta, for example, with an evacuation order can result in fines or arrest. In British Columbia, again, the same sort of thing. And offenders can face fines of up to $10,000 or jail time of up to 1 year. Ontario permits police or designated personnel to remove individuals forcibly and to arrest those who obstruct or fail to comply with emergency orders. And the Federal Emergency Act, which is rarely invoked, grants the federal government extraordinary powers, including the ability to compel actions and enforce orders. Civil liberties are still practiced, or protected, I should say, by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but enforcement powers can include detainment or arrest where necessary for public safety. The bottom line is, yes, authorities do have the legal right to arrest or forcibly remove individuals who defy evacuation orders during a declared emergency. These measures are seen as necessary to protect lives and prevent interference with emergency response efforts. And that's the other side of it, too.
That's right.
If you're in around that area and you're refusing to go, or you're like a rubbernecker and you're in trying to see what's going on, you could be hindering the flow of ambulances, pumper trucks, tanker trucks, whatever those crews who are fighting that fire or dealing with the flood require to get their jobs done. You could be hampering it.
I agree with you, Gary. There absolutely has to be consequences for individuals that absolutely refuse to leave their home. There is zero sensible reason why a person would stay in their homes, assuming or making the incorrect judgment call that this will pass over us, it's not going to affect me. Well, you know what? How often have we heard stories where it does impact an individual, and unfortunately, this individual who refuses to leave takes down a few more people with him because of their stubbornness. Because, yes, the rescuers are out there. They are civil servants. They're being paid to do a job. All of these individuals, most, if not all these individuals, go above and beyond a paycheck. They will go out there and risk their lives to go out and rescue you, even though you had 2 or 3 opportunities to not put yourself in that situation. Gary, very, very simply put, right? If there is a 3-story building and for some reason there is a crack in the foundation and somebody declares the building uninhabitable because it's too dangerous, how many individuals do you know of or think would actually stay in the building that has the potential of falling over at any moment? More often than not, these people will abandon ship. They'll leave their homes. Why do you have individuals out in the country or out in the bush that don't realize there is an impending disaster coming? It's time to go. You know what? From the 5 points you put up there in terms of theft, vandalism, and looting, you know what? Take your most prized possessions with you. I mean, more often than not, individuals have vehicles. Put your money, put your pictures, put your jewelry, put whatever you need to in your vehicle that you figure is worth money and leave. A kitchen table can be replaced. A refrigerator can be replaced. The contents in your contents in your refrigerator could be replaced. But what cannot be replaced is the life of a search and rescue team or a fire brigade member that goes down because of the fact somebody didn't heed warnings to get out of their homes and evacuate. There is no substitute. You know what, Gary? Human life is a loss no matter what, even if you're stupid or you're an emergency worker. Either way, it's a tragic loss. But what I hate hearing is when stupidity prevails and life is lost. I cannot stand that. So I'm in 100% agreement, Gary. Those laws that you stipulated that are provincial, I would tack on, make it a federal crime where, you know what, if you do not listen to a law official, especially when a state of emergency is declared, I'm sorry, it's jail time. Call me aggressive in this particular thing, but you know what, the police officer is going to do their job. They're going to get you out of there. Nobody dies, including the person that decided that they don't want to leave their property. It's just not right. Just not right.
No, it's not. And I can tell you from working with the emergency management of people that these decisions are not taken lightly, because there are a whole lot of things at play here, whether it's, where do we house these people? How quickly can we house them? How do we get them from point A to point B? The impact on the economy. If you declare the state of emergency, but you get things cleared up very quickly, there's still an impact on the economy. So there's a host of things. And, you go back to the days of the pandemic and the misinformation that was being spread around on social media. It just made no sense. And people were just eating that stuff up, like just believing every crazy idea that came along. And the conspiracy theories and everything on social media, especially during the pandemic, I think has played into more and more of what we're seeing now when you have people who are refusing to evacuate with the threat of a wildfire bearing down on them, or a flooding situation, or we're getting you out to be on the safe side, and it may not come to pass, but right now it looks like it could come to pass. So for getting
Right.
you out of harm's way now while it's much easier to do it. Because just turn on your newscast, your national newscast, and watch some of the video of people leaving some of these northern communities in Manitoba and Saskatchewan in particular in the last few days, and the flames are at the edge of the road. And I'm not just talking about like a little grass fire burning at the edge of the road. These are huge flames that are probably starting to melt the paint off the sides of their vehicles. Like they're that close. So these decisions are not taken lightly. And the other side of it is they err on the side of caution. They'd rather be, sorry that it didn't
Safe
happen,
and
and that you were inconvenienced, but at least you were safe. And had it come to pass that the fire rolled in, or the flooding, the river overflowed, and we had severe flooding, then you were safe, and you weren't scrambling at the last minute. And there's something else that, as Canadians, over the last, even just in the last 5 years, the intensity of the wildfires, the intensity of flooding at all times of the year, including in the middle of winter, has increased significantly. And Canadians, there has been a push by emergency management officials at the federal and provincial levels, and to a degree at the municipal levels as well, to be prepared for 72 hours. Have a kit that can last you for 72 hours of water, medication, and different things. But now you should be prepared. Like, we have a grab-and-go bag. Mm-hmm. And it contains all of our important papers and documentation and some other things. And that bag is ready to go at the drop of a hat. Boom, we're gone. And everything else after that, okay, it's all insurable. If I have time and I can grab my MacBook on the way by, I will, but that's not a necessity. My primary concern is to get my wife and the little one, the dog, out the door to safety, the petite pisser, out the door to safety. So we have to start taking some, once again, as individuals, I don't know why we've just kind of pushed everything over, government will look after it. No, you know what? Sometimes you have to look after it yourself. You have to be prepared. And as I say, working with the emergency management officials and being involved in some training scenarios and everything, these decisions are not taken lightly at all. So it's best to listen up and do what you're told. Grab your family, your cat, your dog, cats, dogs, whatever, and your important documents, and get the hell out the door and go to wherever they're telling you to go. Because they always seem to manage to find places to set up. Look at Gander, Newfoundland back at 9/11.
Yeah,
Look at
exactly.
how quickly all of a sudden they had 300 planes, something like that, land?
Yeah, very quickly.
It can be done. And again, those people, they had no control over their destiny at that stage. So just grab it and go. And if you feel your rights are being violated, well, at least you're going to live another day to bitch about it.
Right.
So go ahead and bitch.
Well, it's interesting too, though. I mean, you're looking at a lot of these rural areas, up north that are getting hit by these wildfires. And you brought up a couple of points. Number one, not trusting the government, and two, the crap that you hear on social media. Well, you know what? More often than not, in these northern communities and smaller towns, everyone knows each other. Okay, so if the local chief or the local sheriff or the local government official comes by and says, "Hey, listen, Joe, you got to get out of here. The fire is going to overrun this town. If if you don't leave, you're going to die. Well, I would imagine there would be a certain level of trust with the people that you probably bump into every second day when they say, get out of Dodge, get out of Dodge. So I still don't understand, how people don't trust, you know what? I don't trust the government. But Gary, you know what? If you came running upstairs, running up to 4 floors and basically say, Eddie, we got to get out of here, the building's going to collapse. Well, you know what I'm going to do is, Gary, lead the way. I'll follow you out because I know you. I mean, I just don't get that. And that's the first thing that came to my mind in some of these indigenous communities up there. I mean, they're very small. I mean, you're talking 1,000 people tops, 500 people tops in the village. Everyone knows each other. So if the chief comes blasting his sirens and basically saying we need to evacuate, well, you know what? If it came from the government, fine. But this is your friend. That's your friend and your neighbor that's saying get out of town, otherwise you're going to die. I'd probably trust him regardless of what I thought about the government. I don't know. I guess I just don't get it, Gary, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, and neither do I. But yeah, don't be a dunce. Just do it.
Yeah.
And like I say, you'll live to bitch about your rights being violated the next day, or as you're stretched out on your emergency cot in an emergency housing situation, and you have your phone with you. You can get on Bookface or X or whatever and bitch all you want about, well, my rights were violated because I had to leave my house. Meanwhile, you might want to check on your security camera, as so many have done in the last few days, and watch their houses on their security cameras go up in flames and smoke.
Yeah.
And very quickly, like once it hits, it's gone. You would not have enough time at that stage to get yourself to even think about getting yourself to any kind of safety at all. So, like I say, bitch away. It'll fall on my deaf ears, but you can bitch if you feel better. So anyway, I'll let it go at that for now. And where am I here? Oh, yeah. Okay. So coming up, of course, we have Eddie's playoff pulse. But before we do that, we just hope that you are enjoying our stream. And if you would like to show your support, you know what? Why not buy us a coffee? You can do that. Simply scan the QR code over here on the screen, or you can click the link in the description below. And Eddie and I will enjoy the coffee, and thank you for the coffee and your support.
Absolutely.
Well, Eddie, the time has come.
Yes, it has.
Yes, no more screwing around. It is time to...
This is serious stuff now.
Ta-da! It's Eddie's Stanley Cup Pulse. Take it away, Eddie.
It is serious stuff now, Gary. And, we were 8, and then we were 4, and then there were 2. Last week, the Florida Panthers, they beat the Carolina Hurricanes in the division final, in the conference final, to advance to the Stanley Cup. And our very own Canadian, the last standing Canadian team in the NHL, the Edmonton Oilers beat the Dallas Stars 4-1 to advance to the Stanley Cup Final. And yes, absolutely, these are the same two teams that fought it out to Game 7 last year, at which the Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers last year in Game 7. So it's a series rematch, and it's one that a lot of hockey fans were hoping would happen and are looking forward to. And both teams absolutely well-deserved in getting into the Stanley Cup. Now the Stanley Cup, right? We are now in the final round of the NHL playoffs. And this is to win the most prestigious trophy in all of professional sports. And it's the most bruising, punishing, and toughest of championships to win in professional sports. And you know what? And when it's over, Gary, we're all going to hear of stories of players playing through the horrendous injuries that they've suffered, winner on the winning side or on the losing side. Just to give you an example, a key member of the Florida Panthers last year, Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, this guy's as tough as they come. He's a third-generation Tkachuk player that's playing in the NHL. His father was Walter Tkachuk. His grandfather was Walter Tkachuk. His father was Keith Tkachuk, menacing player for the St. Louis Blues. And of course, he has a brother, Matt Tkachuk, playing in Ottawa. Just to give you an idea of how much it cost, Brady Tkachuk played in Ottawa, how much Matt Tkachuk sustained in terms of an injury last year. He actually played with a cracked sternum. This is the bone in front of your chest. He was playing with a cracked sternum, much so after winning the Stanley Cup in the dressing room. His brother had to get into the dressing room and help him undress and get his equipment off, just to give you an idea of how brutally tough this championship is to win. And you know what, Gary? Great time of the year for Canadians. I'm not saying Canadiens de Montréal. I'm saying Canadians from Canada, especially when one of our old teams are actually in the finals. And you know what? It seems like Canadians and all of Canada from coast to coast has jumped on the Oiler bandwagon. I mean, I read stories today from bars out in the East Coast that typically root for either the Canadians or the Maple Leafs. People are filling up the bars wearing Oilers jerseys. I'm seeing stuff from all over the world on social media. People in places where they don't even know hockey exists wearing Oiler jerseys and posting them. And this is coast to coast. And you know what? I think there's a greater sense of nationalism that's associated with this year's playoffs, considering the fact we have one Canadian team left. And I think a lot of this has to do, thanks to the person who shall go unnamed Mr. down in the United States and his annexation rhetoric. Everybody is just gung-ho about Canada, regardless if it's politics or it's sports related. We're all on board with the Edmonton Oilers. And it's all about bringing the cup home back to Canada. As I mentioned last week, in Montreal, the Champlain Bridge, which is the most heavily traveled bridge in North America, home of the Montreal Canadiens, we don't want to hear about Western Canadian hockey teams, actually had a sign in beautiful color, the sign that basically tells drivers what the status of the traffic is on the bridge, in beautiful Oiler colors, cheering the Edmonton Oilers on. Now, how often can you actually see this from the province of Quebec, which goes to say a lot of Quebecers are very much Canadian, are feeling Canadian these days for good reason or bad, which is fantastic to see. Prediction-wise, Gary, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I think this one's going to go down to 7 games again.
I think
and
so,
at
too.
the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to goaltending. You know what? We're always talking about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl leading the way for the Edmonton Oilers. And I mean, let's look at the Panthers. They are a solid two-way hockey team, very, very aggressive, and they're all over you in a matter of seconds. I think it's going to come down to a goaltender duel between Sergei Bobrovsky of the Panthers and Stuart Skinner, who's an Edmonton homeboy, and he's really playing solid hockey. And I think whoever wins that battle of the goaltenders is going to be hoisting the Stanley Cup with the rest of his teammates. Both teams right now, Gary, as far as I can tell, are extremely evenly matched when you're looking at goal-scoring prowess. If you're balancing offense and defense with goaltending, different styles of play, I think they're very, very evenly matched if you look at the statistics for the first 3 rounds. Now, for Edmonton, Draisaitl, McDavid have to continue at their present pace in terms of their contributions to the games, and also Stuart Skinner has to continue standing on his head because he's been absolutely outstanding. Now, if I go back to my initial formula when the playoffs started so many weeks ago, I always say the team with the most Canadians is going to hoist the Stanley Cup, regardless of what city they're coming from or what city they're playing for. So, just to recap, the Edmonton Oilers, 65% of their rosters are Canadian boys. The Florida Panthers, only 32% of their players are Canadian boys. So right now, I'm going to put my money down in the Edmonton Oilers just on that pure fact. And look, Edmonton played their first game last night. I don't know if you watched, Gary, but watching or listening to the national anthem being sung at the arena it gave me goosebumps and shivers up and down my spine. They sung the American anthem. Everyone was very polite. There was no booze, which is fantastic from a sports perspective. You heard the singer start off with the first verse of O Canada, put his microphone away. 18,000 people singing Air Canada, O Canada at the top of their lungs. I had goosebumps. And you know what? Hearing that national anthem, I would be very surprised if even the ardent Maple MAGA or any separatists in our country did not get goosebumps and feel a sense of Canadian pride listening to that. So, puck drop, right? The Edmonton Oilers, just a little bit after the first period, scored the first goal, and the place just went absolutely nuts. The game went back and forth. I thought the competition was pretty much even both ways. But unfortunately, going into the third period, Edmonton was down 3-2. So in the third period, at the 6-minute mark, the Edmonton Oilers tied the game. And guess what, Gary? It went into overtime. And Leon Draisaitl, who did not score in last year's championship run in the Stanley Cup Final in the last round, he scored the opening goal. And guess what? With 30 seconds left to go in the overtime period, Draisaitl scores the overtime winner. And it was a real, real good game. If I was to tip my hat off to any players on the ice, it would have gone to the goaltenders, Gary. Bobrovsky and Skinner. They just played absolutely fantastic hockey. And I am looking forward to the next game, and I really hope this goes to Game 7 because A, it's good for our country, B, it's great for the sport, and C, we'd love to see the Stanley Cup here back in Canada. So it's been, the playoffs this year have not been disappointing at all. I know maybe to you because the Maple Leafs didn't make it any further than the second round. And to me, because Les Canadiens, Les Glorieux, did not make it to out of the first round, so both you and I can look forward to next year. But you know what? Go Edmonton. What a fantastic tournament. What a fantastic tournament, Gary. And for any of our listeners, I would really encourage you to tune into the Stanley Cup playoffs because, like I said, it is the toughest trophy and championship to win in professional sports anywhere in the world.
And as you said, Eddie, it's one more slice of the national unity and pride in our country that has developed since the beginning of the year in particular, where it's become a very deep sense of pride and unity. And really, yes, it's the Oilers versus the Panthers, but it's really kind of, I guess, when you look at it, Canada versus the U.S. in some respects. It's how some people would be looking at it. And but any way you look at it, it's going to be a really exciting series. It's going to be hard fought, as you said, and I agree. It's going to go down to 7. We've got a couple of comments coming in right now, so let me just clear the deck. And I don't know if you caught Greg's or not, but he said, "Bang on, Eddie, but not too fast. We tend to always get to the finals. We got to win it this year."
Yes, we do.
And then out to BC, I believe. Joe says, both teams are evenly matched. I hope it doesn't come down to bogus penalties or Bettman.
He's not too far from the truth there. And Joe, by the way, I know you feel bad too because the Vancouver Canucks didn't even make it into the playoffs. At least Gary and I are one step ahead of you.
Ouch. Ouch. Anyway. Well, that pretty much wraps up episode 36 of Night Talk. Can you believe it? Where'd the time go? From political collaborations to pressing public safety issues and, of course, the excitement of the Stanley Cup Final. We've covered the stories shaping our nation this week. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you're watching the replays of either the live stream or the edited version that goes up sometime overnight. By all means, let's keep the conversation going. Eddie and I check those comments, and we do respond to any comments that we get after the fact for sure. So please do so. That also helps our channel. The more comments, people commenting that we get, and of course the liking and the sharing. We've picked up a couple more subscribers today, Eddie. I'll tell you about that later.
Nice.
So, want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're tuning into the live show or whether you are watching later on the replays. Thank you for doing that. We really do appreciate it. We have a lot of fun putting this together and sitting here and expressing our opinions and thoughts and what have you. And we appreciate your support throughout. It's hard to believe we're at episode 36 already. And this time last year was still just a twinkle in our eyes over a coffee on a Saturday morning. So anyway, with that, well, I'll wrap it up. Remember to stay informed, stay engaged. I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night. Good night, Eddie.
Good night, everybody. Good night.